Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Dr. Patrick Porter. He is the founder of BrainTap, a breakthrough neurotechnology company designed to enhance brain fitness, reduce stress, and support peak mental performance through a powerful blend of visualization, light, and sound therapy. The folks at BrainTap are on a mission to better 1 billion brains, and they're well on their way to already transforming thousands of lives across wellness clinics, corporate wellness clinics, and at home. Now, Dr. Patrick Porter is an award-winning author and speaker. Of course, he's the founder of BrainTap, and he's dedicated his life to studying neuropsychology. And so for years, it was believed that we have a number of brain cells and we can't change our brain. But now we're realizing that the brain is definitely very changeable and trainable, and you can do it at any age. Now, Dr. Porter's clinical experience and research told him much of that different story, and that is why he is here today to talk about what he's seeing in his clinic, in addition to what his clients are seeing, and multiple wellness clinics who are using BrainTap and what they're seeing. Plus, we're going to talk about Tom Brady's physical therapist, how he's using BrainTap with adjustments and dry needling. We're going to talk about a perimenopause program that is in the works and will be out here in the next month that he helped a gal create. How cool is that? So we're even going to dive into Dr. Porter's personal BrainTap protocol, how he's using that, and so much more. So if you're looking to tap in to your own brain's possibility for rewiring and change, this is the podcast for you. Let's introduce you to Dr. Patrick Porter. Dr. Patrick Porter, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Wow, I have been waiting for this one for weeks because my partner Laura at the Center for Human Restoration and I have been geeking out with BrainTap. I've been having it on my phone. We've been using a little bit of the headset. She's been geeking out like crazy. And we have lots of questions. Even though she's not here, I have lots of questions for you. But jumping into this, one of the things that I have found very interesting about the era that we're in medicine now is that there's a lot of surgence of different brainwave types of capabilities, different types of PEMF, but also I'm seeing a lot of vagal nerve stimulators out there. And one of the big things that I wanted to jump in with is how does BrainTap kind of differ from the folks that might be seeing like, oh, there's PEMF, but then there's also a type of vagal nerve stimulator. What's the difference when you break it down with everything?
We love PEMF. It's something that if it's low level, like a line mat or something like that, you can do it at the same time as BrainTap. The difference is that they're pulsing a frequency, like let's say it's a Schumann frequency, the earth frequency, that your cells are actually listening all the time. And this is what happens with EMF. So if people are wondering why these frequencies are so important, when we get bombarded by a tower, let's say a G5 tower, that's actually pulsing 50 million pulses per second. Our cells have something on them called a chromophore. This is a little battery that absorbs light, sound, and vibration. And it actually changes our epigenetic expression. So for your listeners, just so they understand, back in 2003, when they mapped out our human genome, they said we only had 1%, and then they said we mapped it. They said the rest was junk. Well, what they found out in 2018 was God didn't make any junk. That in 2018, what happened was we have technology now that shows that our epigenetic expression changes every DNA pair every 40 seconds. So that means these pulses, your body is trying to tell you what to do. To put it in perspective, when we look out at the sun, that sun is not just beaming light to us. Those lights are coming as codes to our body. We call it the circadian rhythm. And I know I saw one of your videos where you talked about the cortisol crash around 2 o'clock. That's natural for everybody. So when you're in a high cortisol state in the morning, that should be natural. You should not drink coffee because it crushes that curve. You have it about 2 hours afterwards. But then at 2 o'clock, when your temperature drops 2 degrees, that's because the light from the sun has instructed your body to reset because our brains were not designed for this day and age. They were designed for the Serengeti. So what happens in the Serengeti? We take a nap. And then, of course, we need to do some down regulation at night. So we'll talk about that later in the podcast. But when we think about first PEMF, we love it because when we think about the brain, of course, is the one that moves the muscles, ligaments, tendons, that moves the energy through the body. But if you have a trauma in the body or toxins in the body, then PMF is a really good way to shake it up. Because when it's vibrating, think of it like when you have a cloudy glass of water and you shake it up and you can get it clear. Your cells are doing that, but what happens is the cells actually shake out the toxins. So when the PMF, and that's why some people will have flu-like symptoms even after they do one. They'll start getting a runny nose or watery eyes because the cells, it dumps it into something called the lymphatic system, right? And so that's why we need to do breathing exercises, BrainTap, whatever it is, after we do these things or during them. Now, we have the high pulse, with the high voltage kind of, or I think it's amperage or whatever it is, but we can't use the BrainTap at the same time as that one. It's a 10-minute dose. And that one, it goes boom, 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 and it basically really resets your body. We have like 4 different ones here at the lab in New Bern that people try out. But as far as vagal stimulators, we love vagal stimulators. Most of them that we've tested here at the lab, humming actually works better. So when you think about humming or singing to yourself is actually one of the best ways you can activate your vagus nerve. But what we did in the BrainTap so all these things are good. And I'm going to explain why BrainTap, it's not better, it's just different in what it does. But there are a few vagal stimulators that really do work. There's a lot that don't. Because they say when you're doing them, hum with them. If they say that as part of their protocol, just hum. Because we've tested and we get the same result with just humming or using their device. Now, there's some electrical stim ones that you wear. Now, the vagus nerve, of course, they call it the wandering nerve, and this is what turns on the parasympathetic system, the rest, digest, and recovery system of the body. What we've done is we use the inner ear. And those lights in the ears of the BrainTap, when people look at that, they go, how weird. Why do they have lights in the ears? That's just bizarre. Well, the lights in the ears are actually pulsating through something called Noget frequencies. Dr. Noget actually had 7 frequencies of the body, and what he found out was if any one of those frequencies are out of tune, so think of your body like a tuned instrument, they now know in science that every cell of your body is singing, and your body together creates a tone. You have a frequency response. That's what keeps the cells of your body together. So when you think about the vagal stimulator and what's happening, what we're doing is we're using light to do that. So that light is pulsing and it changes every 2 minutes because the body in these receptor sites and the way the reticular activating system works, which is that part of the brain that observes our environment, says, is this safe? Is this okay? Am I all right? That's always alert. So we need to keep it vigilant because what we want to train, when training the brain, we want you to stay in a super state of awareness, but in a relaxed state in the physiology so your body can function. What's happening right now is, of course, people are in high sympathetic and they're locked. And so some of these vagal stimulators are really good to unlock that nervous system. And that's what BrainTap does with the light. So, and we started doing that actually with autistic children. We didn't have the ear lights then, but we did a research project in California with Joquita Handy, and we took people that were there was actually a magnetic resonant therapy research program, and she was running it, and every parent had to spend $6,000 to see if they qualified. They dismissed 60% of them. Well, the placebo's 40%. So who were they dismissing? And then, so I said, well, those people that got dismissed, could we do a project with them with BrainTap? Because I'd never done anything with autistic children. I said, if you're willing to run it, I'm willing to supply the equipment. Let's see what happens. What we found out, and the whole thing is about alpha. So when we'll talk about brainwaves probably a little bit deeper later, but think of alpha as the daydreaming, basically first stage of recovery brainwave, and that's where you get your creativity, but it's also linked to speech. So what we found with these autistic kids is they had no alpha. So they would be in high beta, they'd be stimming. You ever seen a kid that shakes and quakes and things like that? That's because just like an animal that shakes, like the song Shake It Off, our body wants to shake that off. Now, when we get into theta, that's why Robert Melillo wrote a book called Disassociated Kids. If they get locked in theta, they're disassociated. This world doesn't exist for them. Even though it exists for us, they're here, but they're not processing through the same sensory-based system. Not that they're not aware. These kids are super brilliant. So what we did was we had them do the BrainTap once a day, and within 30 days, once we got their brainwave of alpha trained up to 23%, 90% of them started speaking. Because the brain, think of these brainwaves as we delve deeper into them, think of them like Wi-Fi networks. If you were to open up your phone, if you're in the city, there's probably 10 different Wi-Fi networks that come up, but you can't get into them because you don't have the the code. The same thing's true with your physiology. When you think about getting into these brainwave states, if you're in a high state of stress and anxiety and beta, then you can't access those healing codes because your body's saying run from this tiger, because the body doesn't discern between a text message, a tiger, a lion, a car accident. It doesn't know the difference. It just is there stress. And there's something I might add here just so they understand, because in your talk, you were talking about sugar levels. I've never met anyone that had a carbohydrate deficiency. So there are people that do, but I've never met them. That means our body produces all the sugar we need. Sitting in your liver right now is 25 grams of glucagon. This is sugar. When you have a stressful event, it dumps it into the bloodstream. Now your body goes through a vicious cycle because you can't process 5 tablespoons of sugar. But that you're supposed to be running from something. You know, your muscles, you're unloading the sugar from your muscles and now the bloodstream. But what's happening is you're sitting in your car, or you're sitting talking to your family member, you're sitting in front of the computer, or you're watching a stressed out movie. So the body has to deploy now insulin, right? So the insulin pump starts. Pretty soon what happens, and what we're finding with a lot of people, is they have what we call insulin resistance, because think of it like this little drip. Insulin's just supposed to come in when you need it. It's like an emergency thing. You got too much sugar in your bloodstream, because if you have more than 1 tablespoon, right, you can have toxemia, it does crazy things to you. So insulin is a fat storage hormone for the listeners, so they understand. Now, where does it put this fat? It doesn't put it where we want it. It'd be nice if we could direct it where we want it, we could shape our bodies, but it puts it in the adipose tissue, like you were talking about belly fat. And they now know that belly fat actually has its own nervous system. So it's a thinking system that drives you to continue to eat the foods that keep it alive. So it's like, wow, that's why the gut-brain connection is so important. And sometimes we use red light therapy, PMF. These are all things that get the gut and brain to coordinate. But the one brain that I want everybody to remember, because the brain between your ears is like a Google tablet. It doesn't do anything unless it's hooked up to the internet. Your brain up here doesn't do anything unless it's hooked up to the heart. That's why if you have a spinal cord injury, your body's still functioning, but you can't walk and talk because this brain has been disconnected. But the real brain in the gut and the brain in the heart, which has 40,000 neutrino cells, is still operating. Those are the two brains that we want to bring into synchronicity. If we can, and that's why HRV, or heart rate variability, is so important today. Everybody's looking at it as the gold standard for healing. So with BrainTap, what we've proved with our NeuroCheck technology, which is heart rate variability on steroids, because we can measure 9 parameters of the nervous system. We can actually show meridians. A lot of acupuncturists will use it to show the blockages, then put the needles in, or the seeds, or whatever they're going to do, or use lasers, whatever they're doing. Then they'll do a rescan and they'll show the energy's now flowing. With BrainTap, because the ears, now we're back to the ears again,
Yes.
the ears have meridian points. They go out throughout the whole body. So but maybe the listeners don't know, you can put a seed in there, you can put a laser in there, you can put a needle in there, and it actually directs energy through the body. So what I thought was, wow, with these autistic kids, they can't understand me, or at least I don't know they're understanding me because they're stimming or they're doing whatever. So we started to put the Nogier frequencies in. What we found out was after about 3 minutes, virtually everyone looked like they passed out. The parents said, I'm not leaving till I get that. How did you do that? Well, what we did was we triggered the vagus nerve. And then the body knows how to heal itself. We have to get out of the way. We have to feed it the right nutrients. We have to move and breathe. And we have to do some kind of mental fitness, or brain fitness, as I like to call it. And so all that works in. So when you think about what's different is you can do everything else. But if you're not fixing the brain, it's not going to work. Because that's the main reason for that, I should say, is that they've done a lot of studies on pessimists and optimists. Okay, one study that was circulating around COVID was they took people that looked at COVID as a challenge, and other people looked at it as a threat. And you might not know this, or your listeners might not know this, but your cells are actually absorbing light energy all the time from the sun, from the room, from everything, and it's absorbing it into the mitochondria. Then it's broadcasting it out. You are actually broadcasting 10 nanometer light. Everyone does it. And it extends out about 3 feet. And our NIH actually, if you go to their website and put in biosphere, you'll see that in 1994, they said, we have a biosphere and all illness starts in this field. So I'm not sure why they're still giving out pills, because you can't have a pill without a skill. So if you can take the pill and then the brain will get dumb, it'll say, oh, you're taking the pill, I don't need to do it anymore. That's like drinking the coffee first thing in the morning. You don't want to do that because it crushes that cortisol curve. You need that cortisol to wake up neopinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol. All that you need in the morning. And then when it naturally drops, you need to re-trigger it again through a cycle of sleep. Because during that cycle of sleep, you're also building neurotransmitters, which we can go into a little bit later. That's where you build up your neurotransmitter bank account. It's normal to feel tired in the afternoon, especially as we age. Now, when we're younger, we can just blow right past that. And this is because our brains, when we're born, are 18.1 volts. When we're about 21, it goes to about 10.1 volts. If that voltage drops below 7, we're going to have dementia-like symptoms. If it drops below 4, we're going to have Alzheimer's-type symptoms. In our study we did with Dr. Kelly Miller, who's also a chiropractor, he did a study and he wrote a book called Saving Your Brain. It's available on Amazon and all that. He talks about BrainTap because what we did in 6 weeks is take everybody in the study off the dementia scale because of energy. It's all about energy. It's an energy equation. If you have enough energy, think of energy or ATP in the body like you would think of money in the bank account for your business. They say money solves a lot of problems. ATP solves a lot of problems. And when we're younger, we have a lot of it. And this stimulates, of course, stem cells and all these things, killer cells. And when you have the energy, you can activate the whole system and it's all working for you. It's like having a battalion out there, working for you every day in a battle. But if you don't have the supply lines to keep it energized, doesn't matter. They're gonna die. They're not gonna be able to function. They're not gonna be able to wake up. So we need to wake up the system to heal itself. And that's really, I think, BrainTap. We've proven it in science. The NIH study we did, one session of BrainTap proved 27.3% better neurological function. We showed that if they do it 3 times a day or 3 times a week, because we were doing it for clinical use, 3 times a week, that by the end of 30 days, that became their normal. So now they increased, and what I like to say is it's all frequency when you're talking about these things. And what I mean by that is what you frequently see. So if you're a positive person, you see high frequency people, you see high frequency events, you see high frequency foods. But if you're low frequency, when we're talking about that attitude that's so important, if you're low frequency, you look for low frequency foods, low frequency activities. You're a Debbie Downer. And your cells, they've actually proven now that your epigenetic expression actually, if you have a negative thought, you actually down regulate yourself. So it's like saying you have all this potential, but now you're saying to yourself, you can't do it. So the body goes, okay, you're right. You can't do it. So Henry Ford was when he said, when you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so as you think about this, it's all part of the equation is energy. And we can go into detail a little bit more about why we use lights in the eyes and the ears and things like that. But the whole thing is why we're different is we have science. I've been doing this since 1986. Nobody did this before me. There was no biohacking. There were some natural medicine doctors, and I worked with the chiropractor, Stan Fuco, who gave me my first job. And we still work with a lot of chiropractors because they helped me out when I first started. And that's because the spine is the keyboard to the brain. And if the spine isn't aligned, then of course, if the spine's aligned, the energy systems, you can do it through acupuncture too. I mean, that's why we work with acupuncturists, because it's all about energy flowing through the body. If you're not getting that energy from the brain to the body, it's not going to work. So we need to, and that's the pathway is through the spine. And that's what they call subluxations, when you have different blockages in the spine. And what we do is we have a whole series called Neurologically Based Chiropractic, that after they get their chiropractic adjustment, they listen to it so that we can use neuroplasticity. And we can talk a little bit about that too, what neuroplasticity is and neuropruning and neurogenesis.
Yes. You know what? Let's talk about that because I think for a lot of people, there is this concept of I see the chiropractor, they adjust me, then I got to keep going back, 2, 3 times a week for the rest of my life. Same thing with acupuncture. You got to keep going back to keep getting the benefit. But what if we can extend the benefit by using BrainTap? So yeah, let's talk about neuroplasticity and
Talk about that. Parker, who started chiropractic, he would not let his patients leave for an hour after an adjustment because just like yoga, a lot of people do yoga. They think it's a physical exercise. And I do a lot of work with the Ames Institute, the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences. Their neurocenters are called the BrainTap, Brainwave and Treatment Neurocenters over there, because we proved out these ancient traditions like breath work and Reiki and some of their natural remedies. We showed it in science that it's actually doing something to the physiology. It's the physiology department that we're working with, not the psychology department, because they're way behind. They think talking is going to help somebody. And talking might help people, and it does change 3,200 gene expressions, but only if you talk about the solution. If you talk about the problem, you're making a better problem. That's why I'm so disappointed in my profession, because I've never seen a study that's better than 12% in psychology. And the placebo is 40%. So does that mean that they're talking people out of it? And if you're a psychologist listening, go do your research. If you find something better than 12%, I have a standing offer. I'm going to pay you $1,000. Send me that study. I've never seen it. And I've been saying that for like 10 years. Now the problem is that that's old school psychology. Positive psychology is different. That we know that works because now we're setting goals, we're achieving things. And so when let's say you have an adjustment or you get you're aligning the meridians. Well, now the brain is going to have to work really hard during that time. It's going to take energy. That's called neuroplasticity. We need to get so let's say we know, because Dr. Barwell, who's one of the chiropractors that got me into the field with chiropractors, along with Dr. Fab Mancini, who ran Parker College. When you think about, I should say Palmer is the one who started chiropractic, not Parker. I made a mistake earlier, so it's Dr. Palmer. Parker is the college in Texas that I work with a lot. So what we notice is when you do an adjustment, you get this light up in the brain. It's almost like the old Microsoft systems when they said, you got a problem, just reboot it, it'll fix it. That's really what they're doing, because the brain will reorganize. Your brain is designed to heal you. It's not designed to stay dysfunctional, but it needs energy to do that. So when you get the adjustment and you just walk out to your car and you start stressing out again, the brain doesn't get a chance to rewire and fire. So that even 5 minutes or 10 minutes after a workout, or when you've done something strenuous, because when you've done something strenuous in a workout, you created something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. This creates energy in the brain, or ATP. So when you think about these things, and the reason this is important for the listeners, when you were born, you were the smartest you're ever going to be. Believe it or not. You had 18.1 volts. You had a 100 billion neurobit processor, fully wired. You were fully connected. Then as you learned things, you began to unplug your brain. This is called neural pruning. And that's because we can't remember everything at any one time. So the brain is going to figure out, what do I need to remember? That's why if you've learned a language, if you've learned a second language before you're 7, there's a circuit in the brain that helps you to learn different languages. Our science officer, Dr. Sadral, I took him to India with me a couple of years ago. And by the end of 3 weeks, he's speaking Hindi. And I said, Francisco, when did you learn Hindi? He says, we've been here for 3 weeks. He says, I speak 6 languages. His language program in the brain, when we learned to speak, we didn't go to class. We didn't learn about nouns, verbs, adjectives, and all these things. We absorbed that through brainwave frequency called theta, because our brain was operating in high levels of theta. When we're adults, unfortunately, that's a brainwave that suffers. And that's why we focus on that one the most with BrainTap, to get that brainwave back activated. That's your inventive mind. That's when you take everything you think. There's a conscious mind and then there's the unconscious mind, right? So the unconscious is everything you don't know. So it knows everything that you don't know. Imagine that. It's like the internet. And one of the studies that just came out 2 weeks ago that just blew my mind, MIT put it out. They said our brain frequency, when we're thinking and meditating, extends out 10,000 miles. So you're actually broadcasting a frequency like a radio station or a TV station up to 10,000 miles away from you. And they know it affects people. So when you're around the gainers in your life, those people that help you to feel good and then you have those drainers, when they're done, you go, man, that was my last good nerve. Or, you say, or you go, they drain me. There's those people like that. They're literally, it's the mitochondria that absorbs the light. And if they don't have enough energy, they're going to find people they can suck that energy off. It's not sci-fi anymore. This is neuroscience. And it's really spooky because, when you're around people that uplift you, that motivate you, that keep you, like if you have a good practitioner like yourself in your center, then people they leave there and they're energized. It's just as important to be in that energy field as it is to get the treatment. Because I know people that walk into a chiropractor and they feel they get an adjustment just by walking in. Like they feel their back crack because it's energy. It's all energy. And their brain was anticipating it. And then it happened because the spine will align because the brain tells it to. The brain moves the muscles, which moves the bones and ligaments and tendons. Those ligaments and tendons and bones don't do anything on their own. That's why you have to have that connection with the brain and the body. Now, almost everything else, and we have 6,000 square feet here, and you're welcome to come down to the lab and see it. We do brain scans, we look at blood work, and we can talk about that too, and all those things. But we show almost every biohacking piece of equipment here. We have 6,000 square feet of it. It's like a playground. And our doctors can come and spend a day here. We show them it all, but we show them how it works with the NeuroCheck. So we're not guessing, we're testing. Nothing moves the needle. I'm saying absolutely nothing moves the needle better than BrainTap. We see the biggest results because if you think about it, the energy starts in the brain, moves down the spine out to the limbs. But if you can put energy out here in the body, but if the brain doesn't connect to it, that's the hard way.
Yeah.
But if you can do them both at the same time, that's why we love partnering in what we call biostacking. You're going to stack different modalities at the same time to get them to work in coordination. So we do have vagal stimulators here that do work. So they might use a vagal stimulator, especially somebody that's really compromised. You need to be like Rambo. Then you don't want to be like a Pollyanna or something. You got to hit them with everything because their energy system needs an upgrade. And so that's what we do.
Love the multi-level stacking approach. And this is something we're trying to work with at our center because we're finding that people are getting sicker and sicker and more dysregulated. And of course, this is kind of a segue into something that I would like to talk about because you were talking about 5G. We have this thing called the social media and TikTok and Instagram, but we also have this phenomenon of all these games that people are trying, their commercials on TV trying to suck people into these games where they'll make money. What have you seen? Have you guys tested the impact of someone doing one of those types of games and then
Yes,
coming?
we've measured a child's brain before and after playing a game, and we've also done it live through time. And what we find is about an hour on the game is about what they should do. The problem isn't the game. The problem is they're not getting recovery after the game because they're stressing their brain out. Actually, their brain looks like somebody on crack cocaine or something. It's crazy because what they're doing is they keep exciting the body. When you talk about stress and cortisol and sugar release, they're burning their body out. And they're just young people. So what are they going to be when? That's why we have 30 and 40-year-olds getting dementia. Yes. Because they're burning out the system. And playing that game is, even though it appears that it's just a fun little game, maybe you're playing a single shooter game, which is crazy, that you're doing that. But what happens is your brain, like right now, as we're talking, you're looking at a computer screen, right? That computer screen has millions of LEDs. Believe it or not, you are predicting if they're going to turn red, green, or blue. Every one of them. Just like in the movie with Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man, when they dropped the toothpicks on the ground, he said 1,237. They go, how do you know that? He said, I just counted them. We all can do that. But our brain has something, and the best way I can explain is nose blindness. If you know somebody who lives near a dump, or and then we have sound blindness if you live near an airport. We have, because somebody, or a train track, and somebody says, how can you live here? That train goes by and just rattles me. I don't even hear the train anymore. I don't even hear the airplane. I don't smell because the brain is really good at shutting them down. And that's good and bad. What if you have mold in your house? Yeah. And you turn off because you didn't move, the brain goes, it must not be a problem. So I'm going to turn off that warning light off. It's like putting a black piece of tape over your light on your engine that says, do your engine. And you said, well, you know what? I don't want to see that. I'm going to put a piece of black tape over it. And this is what medicine does. When people take medicine, and I think medicine, and I'm just going to give you a couple examples, all SSRIs were approved for 14 days of use, which means they're meant for critical situations to help that person get out of that stuck state, but then they're supposed to get back to normal. But most doctors will tell you take 28 days for it to work. Now, what do you mean? It takes 28 days to get you addicted. And then your brain gets patterned. Then it's hard as hell to get off of those things. But your brain creates its own neurotransmitters. Why would you need a serotonin uptake inhibitor? Your brain wants the serotonin of this moment. We did a study in Brazil because opioids were approved for 4 weeks of use only. So they're giving them to people for life. Sometimes, I had a brother-in-law that had a surgery and said, you're going to have to take this pill the rest of your life for pain. Why would that be? Your body is changing at a rate of 50 million cells per second. Your DNA is rebraiding every 40 seconds. You're a completely new person in 2 to 4 years. So, every cell is different. Why would you sentence somebody to life by taking a pharmaceutical? It's a lifestyle issue. So what we did in Brazil, we had a graduate student at Saul University down there. That's one of the largest universities in Brazil, which we're partners with their neuro lab. And the graduate student tracked people doing surgery. They gave them opioids for 4 weeks. Half of them got BrainTap, half of them didn't. At the end of 4 weeks, we said, okay, get off your opioids. Our group with BrainTap all got off them, 100%. The group that didn't have BrainTap didn't, because you can't have the pill without the skill. Your brain creates its own pharmacy. You have 30,000 different neurochemicals with a simple thought. But if you can train the brain to do anything that's external that's affecting you, one more example for them so they understand. We were doing a study in Dallas with Dr. Rosenthal on PTSD, and they were using a psilocybin. At the time, I had never done psilocybin. I don't do it. I've done it a few times, but it takes a long time. It takes like 8 hours out of your. It's like playing golf. You got to invest a lot of time, and I can do the same thing in 20 minutes with BrainTap. So what I did was I basically said, let's map the brains of these people on a psilocybin, because we had a number of these veterans that did not want to take a psilocybin. They thought they'd become addicted to it, and they already had alcohol problems, but that's not true about a psilocybin. They use it to get people off these drugs. But we didn't want to argue with them. We wanted to do the study. So what we did was we said, we mapped the brain, and we found that there's a region of the brain just to the right of the hippocampus that lights up with high gamma. So we created a gamma series. Dr. Rosenthal calls me back. He says, you know what? I've never taken a psilocybin, but I'm having the same trips they're talking about. He said, and some of our veterans are having a psilocybin trips with no psilocybin, because we activated every cell of your body. When you're in theta or you're in gamma, your body produces something called GABA. GABA is a neurotransmitter that is like the most researched out there right now. And GABA is a precursor to DMT. So it instructs the body, and every cell of your body has this molecule. They call it the God molecule, because if you can unlock DMT in the system, you can heal anything. That's where these spontaneous healings you read about and learn about in science, they say, well, there's this big blast of DMT that moves through the system and basically corrects everything. That's why they call it the God molecule. So it just puts everything right. So our brain is the part that does that. And every muscle, by the way, is like a little pharmacy too. That's why we need muscle on the body. We need to do resistance training and things like that to keep our muscle base. So I'm simplifying it somewhat here, but it's part of the equation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It leads me back to thinking about healing anything, because I work in a clinic where we're looking at chronic Lyme. We're looking at chronic mold toxicity, but not chronic mold toxicity, but chronic mold illness. We're looking at even women that are also going through perimenopause, menopause at the same time. I'm going, okay, clearly these bugs also have a frequency. These mycotoxins have a frequency. How do you intersect with that? Is it more like the better vibration you've got, the more you can shake the bugs out, the more you can get them into the lymph and clear it out?
Well, we actually use a product that was researched in Korea, spent over $25 million and used by the Swiss Performance Institute that came to visit me. They have 40,000 Olympic athletes under contract. And they asked me, what do I do for gut health? I said, well, we leave that up to the nutritionists, because they know better than we do. But we believe in, gut biome and all that. So they came up with something called Energy Up Biotics, and it actually replaces your gut biome. It works better than that feces plant transplant that only works for 6 weeks and then your body goes back. They've created a product that actually destroys the old microbiome and reinstalls an ancient biome, your ancient biome. And they've proven it in science. And we've had some miracles happen with people, like with Crohn's disease and all sorts of things, when they start taking this probiotic that is, it's very easy to use. In fact, when we're done, I'll send you the link. You can share it with the listeners. But you have to order it from Switzerland. It delivers in 3 days. It's not very expensive. But you do a 3-month trial. You do a 3 months with that. But I believe you should be taking some kind of probiotic all the time, because we're being bombarded. We're 55% other things. Those bugs you're talking about, we're only 45% human. So when you think about it, when that's why we need to get our gut in harmony with our brain and between our ears and our heart. All these, the gut brain is the biggest brain. It has more neuron connections than a brain between our ears. So, and what's controlling those is our microbiome. We have microbiome also, we have brain biome. So if you have a leaky gut, I can guarantee you have a leaky brain, because you're not detoxifying the brain. And we can talk about sleep maybe a little bit too, and talk about why that's important and how BrainTap helps.
Yes, let's talk about sleep, because the leaky gut component and all of that, I feel like it goes hand in hand. If the gut's off, the sleep's off, because it seems there's deep connections there.
Yeah, because your body has a foreign invader. Basically, when you have that loose cellular structure and those proteins leak out into the lymph system and then into the body, it's a toxic environment. So the body's saying, hey, we can't be sleeping right now. We got to go do. And most of the time, the reason they're waking up actually is because they don't have energy. The body's saying, get up and eat. because they've locked out. They're locked out of all of their energy. The stored fat is a lot of energy, but they've never got to the second phase of digestion where they're burning their body fat and getting ketones to the brain. Most people don't realize when you eat food, you should wait at least 4 hours to 6 hours before eating food, depending on how fast your transit time is. But you need to get the food you've consumed out of first phase digestion. Second phase digestion is feeding your brain, because now your body's going to tap into fat stores and give you ketones to keep you thinking right. And so it's an energy equation again. So imagine this, back in 2015, they find a new part of the human anatomy. Before 2015, every physiology in the book in the world, the lymph system stops here. But then during a sleep study, some doctor recognizes this glial lymphatic system. So think of the glia system, the glia cells. These are like networkers. So you're at a network meeting, you're shaking hands. At the end of the night, you want to wash your hands. Well, this happens when you're sleeping because spinal fluid comes up through the spine, and your skull actually pulses. This is the pump, and it washes over the glia cells. And then when you reach level 4 sleep, this glial lymphatic system, a system that wasn't even known about before 2015, opens up and you detox. We need at least an hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep, and we can crush any sleep score. We did a study in Australia with coal miners, and when we did they call it a washout study, and we did a pre-study. So what we did was we studied them for 2 weeks before we started the study, because we wanted to know what their baseline was. The average coal miner slept 10 hours a night, but only got 1 minute of deep sleep. 0 REM. They were in bed, but they weren't sleeping. The misconception about sleep is I'm in bed, I must be sleeping. No,
Right.
we need to unwind the body. That's where BrainTap comes in. It steps you down into delta, lets you go. Now, if you don't have BrainTap right now, then you could practice doing a 4-8 breath, where you breathe into the count of 4. This triggers the sympathetic system. Then you breathe out to the count of 8, which triggers the parasympathetic system. And while you're breathing in, you're going to think about your day, but don't try to solve any problems. Just think about it. Your brain knows what to do about it. And then when you're breathing out, think of everything you're grateful for. It could be just as simple as the pillow you're on, the bed you're in, the person laying next to you, the room you're in, the house you have, the job you have, whatever you're grateful for, because this is going to help you to become a more positive, optimistic person. It's going to set you up with energy. And then once you unwind the body, most people don't, when you go to sleep, you don't want to just fall asleep. You want to lay there for a little bit. You want to unwind the body. That's why some people are gnawing they're gnawing their teeth, they're clenching their body, because they haven't unwound. Every cell is like a transducer. A transducer in an electric circuit holds a charge to a certain discharge point. And we all have a discharge point, right? And unfortunately, that's usually the people that we love, we discharge on. So, but we want to learn to discharge, because when we have high energy, high frequency, we can deal with a lot of things. But if we have low frequency, that's when we can't handle the stresses, the strains, the confusions of the day. So think of sleep as the time when you're building your superpowers. Your ability to say no to sugar, your ability to say no to alcohol, your ability to say yes to activities, your ability to read books. All of these are superpowers, because not everybody can do them. In every superhero, this is for the listeners, every superhero had to go through the dark night of the soul. If they're coming to your clinic, if you're going through some kind of something with your body, you are developing your superpower. You're finding out what your kryptonite is, so you can put it in a lead box and you can go about saving yourself, but then save the world. Because whatever you do, you are helping your family and friends. In epigenetics now, our epigenetic scientists said that 7 generations are influencing you right now. Now, the Hopi Indians said 7 generations are guiding them right now. So how did the ancient traditions know about this new modern neuroscience is beginning to sound more and more like a religion than it is a science, because there's this woo-woo factor in quantum physics, because we are light generating quantum machines, and we have a lot more potential than we're activating. Now, we use a lot of our brain. In fact, they say we use 100% of our brain, but we don't use 100% of its potential. So and think about the body. If they found this in 2015, what other dormant systems are in the body that can help us through these times? We have to get into that relaxed state, into a state of acceptance, and let the body develop, because we're not done evolving yet. We can activate different systems in the body. If people like Wim Hof, if you look up Wim Hof on YouTube, he's a kind of a crazy guy that does his deep breathing exercises, but they actually injected him with poison and he breathed it out of his body. Now, he's not a superhuman. He's just a person. But what he did was he knows how to activate his immune system at such a high level through breath that they can't poison him. That's a superpower. And he teaches other people to do it, and other people are doing it. So I mean, these are things that we're in the threshold now of some really great discoveries of the human anatomy, and we're being challenged. And stress is when evolution happens. You know, and some people go, "Gosh, Dr. Porter, I would love you to just get rid of all my stress." I said, "That will happen one time in your life. It's called death." You know, all the stress in your body will leave. You will too. 3/4 of an ounce leaves. They don't know what that is. That's you. But your body is no longer animated. That's why they have dead weight and live weight. You know, so when you think about your body, who you are is not the body. Your job is to preserve this body, to work with this body, just like you would if you had a Lamborghini. You know, you wouldn't put bad gas in a Lamborghini, but you'll put sodas into your body. You know, or you'll have sugar drinks and sugar foods, and you have to think. Then you complain, my body's giving up on me. My body's not working right. Well, no, your body's doing exactly what it can do with the information you give it, and everything is information to the body. If you eat a candy bar, that's information. The body has to break it down into its usable cell systems and organs and turns it into energy that then the body can use and then eliminates what it can. You know, so if we get it, I always tell people the best foods are God's labels. You know, there are no labels, because if it has a can, bottle, or wrapper and it has ingredients you can't read, you probably can't digest it. It's going to cause a toxic environment. That's why I say you cannot think a bad diet. Fix your diet. You know, even if it's just drinking half your body's weight of ounces of water first. That's the first step for most people, because they're drinking coffees, teas, and herbal teas are okay. But if you're drinking black tea and coffee and sodas, you are creating a toxic environment and you're disrupting digestion, which means you never get into fat burning. That's why diet sodas don't drink. I've never met a skinny person drinking diet sodas. So obviously they don't work. You know, what's the deal with that? You know, there should be a lot of skinny people drinking these diet sodas that are out.
Oh, yes. Yes. Fun, interesting phenomenon. Interesting phenomenon. Now, moving into that, because I think it is one of those things where women, as they're moving into perimenopause, menopause, they will start to gravitate towards, weight gain and what do I do and how do I get all over these types of symptoms. And I always talk about we're changing fuel. And I'm kind of basing it a little bit from Chinese medicine, because we talk about the kidney and the heart energy in Chinese medicine, but we're also talking about switching from ovaries to adrenals for where the hormones are coming from. But I'm thinking there's also got to be, because boy, is there a lot of mental stuff that goes on in this time frame. Boy, there's got to be a lot of energetic shift. And I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, we're creating a whole series for perimenopause, and one of our natural medicine doctors is actually, we're partnering with that, and she's putting it together. It'll be available on BrainTap. But what we know is, of course, you got to change your diet. In India, they actually say eat 3 meals a day, be sick. Eat 2 meals a day, be well. Eat 1 meal a day, you have excellent health. I'm not saying fast every day like that, but some women can't fast the same way, so you got to be careful. But you want to think in terms of whatever you're eating right now, you're probably eating way too much, because the stomach is only the size of your fist. So that you should not overfill the stomach. Now, at first, that stomach is stretched out. So, and the apostat, which is your mind's, there's a difference between hunger and appetite. Hunger's in the body, appetite's in the mind. So we need to turn off that switch, that satisfaction. And you do that by slowly eating, what they call mindfulness eating. Enjoy the taste, the smell of the food. Don't watch TV. But if you can be with a conversation with people, they find that's good. Even praying before meals or just doing some breathing exercises before meals, they show that when the body's in more parasympathetic state, you'll use the energy from the food you're consuming. In fact, Virginia Hunt at UCLA actually proved that when you pray over your food, you actually raise the energy or the vibration of the food. So so there's a lot of that because we're broadcasting photons all the time. We're broadcasting energy. So we can direct that energy. So I think that with perimenopause, of course, we all go through cycles and we're going to go through things. And so we have to change our lifestyle, during those times. Maybe you need to have what Tom Brady says is, for every 1 minute of exertion, you need 2 minutes of recovery. So if you're having exertion, and that can include your sleep. So when you think about your day, how stressful it was, the average person only needs 6.5 hours sleep, but it needs to be efficient sleep. That's why some people think, oh, I need 8 hours. I need 10 hours. No, you need 1 hour of deep sleep, 2 hours of REM sleep. The rest is really just to, give you the time, because it doesn't happen all at once, that you're going through a cycle. And as you're going through that cycle, your brain is actually building up your neurotransmitter bank account. Now, if you didn't need that much neurotransmitters to fill up, once all those buckets are full, you wake up. You're 100%. You're now, so as we age, what happens is all those systems kind of slow down because of, could be thoughts, traumas, or toxins, right? That's the key thing. So it could be their thoughts. We're all led to believe that as we grow old, we get stupider. But the reality is, I've never met an ancient culture that said, I keep the wisdom of the tribe with the youngsters. They kept the wisdom of the tribe with the elders. So that must mean we're doing something wrong with our brain. We need to stay active. We need to eat right. We need to stay, active, doing things. We should have an actively good brain until we go. We don't know when that return ticket is, but you want to have a functioning brain. Like my grandmother, who was 93, I caught her one time. I was staying with her, and I thought she was on the phone. So she came out. I said, I was going to come in and talk to you, but you were on the phone. She said, I wasn't on the phone. I said, well, what were you doing? She says, I was remembering all my favorite vacations. And she would do it out loud. She was running the positive memories in her head. She had a perfect memory until she died. Like only about 2 months before she died, she started having like Lewy body experiences and things like that because her brain dysregulated because she didn't eat right. I mean, she always told me, she goes, you're eating like this. She says, when you get older, I hope you're happy. And I said, Grandma, I'm not eating this way when I get older. I'm eating this way so I feel good now. I said, you feel terrible every day. She complains about it, but she does it. My dad said she was too ornery to die. So but the thing is that but I think it was because she would replay all the positive memories, and she'd play golf in her mind every day, just like the Hanoi Hilton, those guys did when they were in prison, and they came out fine, where the other people that thought this just dwelled on the pain and the misery didn't. So our mind plays a big role in this. So with perimenopause, you can go into it thinking, oh man, just like childbirth, for instance, we have a stress-free childbirth program. When I was with the Arizona Health Council, I had to work with pregnant teens. And the most exciting thing was when I could get them telling jokes between contractions, and their mothers or fathers, whoever was the single parent that was with them, was saying, aren't they supposed to be in pain right now? I said, that's an option, but pain's an option to the body. So we taught them the body is designed to give birth, but we have to relax into it, and the body can do it. The body's designed to go through perimenopause. We have to relax into it. But we have to feed it the right, different nutrition, maybe different activities. This stress is telling you something has to change. So remember, if you're changing something, you can always go back to what doesn't work. So change something and see if it works. If it works, great, congratulations. You can always go back to your baseline and see, oh no, that didn't work for me. Okay, I'm going to try something new. But you have to give the nervous system, when you're talking about the nervous system resets every 72 hours. So whatever you do, whether it's PMF, BrainTap, adjustment, whatever it is, your brain is going to start going back to whatever it thinks your neurological norm is. And so if we can disrupt that pattern by doing daily practices like breathing techniques, eating healthy, exercising, these are disrupting the nervous system and putting it back into a positive light. If you don't do anything, the body will dysregulate, and before you know it, it will unwire, because this is called neural pruning. The more you do things different and novel, your brain does something called neurogenesis. We can't go back and save the brain cells that we lost in college, by doing crazy things, But what we can do is we can build new neurons. Our brain is designed to build new ones. That's called neurogenesis. But you have to have neuroplasticity for that to happen. That's the energy in the brain. So remember, it's a voltage problem. I bet if we looked at anybody going through perimenopause, they have dropped below 10.1 volts. They're probably between 9 and 7 volts. If they don't do something about their brain health, they're going to drop into 7. They're going to drop into 4, because the brain energy is the key. And that's why your work with acupuncture or chiropractic, it helps to continue to breathe. It's an energy system. It's a give and take. It's not one way. It's not a one-way system. It's a like biofeedback. It's electrical feedback. And we need to keep the brain energy high so that it can feed the right information to the body to keep us balanced, to keep us thinking, to keep us positive, happy, and healthy.
I absolutely agree. And the more I work with energy, the more I see that. So one quick question before we kind of get into telling folks how they can find out more, and definitely about the perimenopause study that you're doing and more information there. What is your favorite sequence to run right now? What are you working on right now with BrainTap? What are you geeking out on for your daily routine?
Well, I always do at least 2 sessions a day. If I'm traveling, I do 3, because in the morning I need to wake up my brain. We call it digital coffee. And I never drink coffee. I do like coffee, but I only have 1 cup typically. And some days I don't have it, but if I do have it, I'm going to have it either in the afternoon or at 10 o'clock, after I do a session. and 2 hours before awakening. And so, but what I do before that is I have a PMF at my house. I do PMF for 10 minutes. I do my light therapy. I have a headlight that goes on and a gut pad. So I have my brain gut connection. And then I also have an infrared sauna, and I also have a salt chamber. So I get up a couple hours early. For me, because I'm 64 and I plan to be playing with my grandkids as long as they let me, and hopefully their grandkids when they come around. I'm not going to be one of those guys sitting in a wheelchair complaining. I'm going to be active. And so I've got to keep my body. Everybody should be training like they're in the Olympics. It's your Olympics. But I mean, even going to get groceries or twisting and turning to get in the car, if you're starting to get aches and pains, that's a sign that we need to build muscle. We need to get the body going. We need to get the energy systems online. So for me, it's an all-day thing. During the day, like when we get done with this interview, when it gets to be around 2 o'clock, if you looked at my schedule, it will say BrainTap. Because at 2 o'clock, I know the power of that. When we did a study in with Google and Microsoft with Julie Arndt. It's a TED Talk right now about peak performance. She talks about using brain because she asked me, they were having burnout there. They want to know, how can we fix burnout? And I said, well, have them do a session at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because this is the normal time for the body to have this neurological crash. And we're supposed to be taking naps, like on the Serengeti. We're not the lion chasing the zebra at 2 o'clock. But what happens is people will do stimulus, right? They'll do coffees, teas, and chocolates, and they'll stay going, or they'll force themselves through it. And when you're younger, you can do that. But when you're older, like in perimenopause, you can't do that anymore. You don't have the energy to do that. So we need a reboot. Now that reboot could be a theta session, or it could be a beta or gamma session. These are high energy sessions. When you leave them, it's like you got 4 hours of sleep in 20 minutes. And you have this energy, and we've recorded it. So remember, the average person has a 27.3% neurological improvement just by one 20-minute session. Now that's not going to always be 27.3, because once you get regulating, like me, I regulate almost 100% all the time, because I've been doing this for 40 years, and my brain regulates like a 31-year-old when I do all the testing. It's not like when Wayne Dyer said, never let an old person inhabit your body, I took him seriously. We got to keep our attitudes high. We got to eat right. We got to move and breathe. And I usually do bone broth in the morning, and I do greens in the morning. That's my morning time. Now, sometimes when I'm out and about, I will have breakfast, but I like to have my breakfast at noon, just because it works good for me. Some people do it differently than me, but when I'm eating the greens and that is a meal, but there's really no calories. It's just all energy. I'm looking for energy in the morning because I need that energy to get me going. And then in the afternoon, I will eat a light meal. And then at dinner, sometimes I'll just have some kind of soup and, maybe some grains or something like that, or some salad. Usually we eat a lot of greens throughout the day too, but I don't take a chance. I use energy bits so I can get mine, because I know that our salads are not the same as they were, 40 years ago, where they say that it takes 20 oranges to get the same vitamin C we used to get in the 1980s. But to me, it's a lifestyle. It's not just one thing. Now, at BrainTap itself, what we're excited about is we have all these different studies going on. We have 7 studies going on right now, and we've published 33 of them. Ever since COVID, university's been jumping all over it because they realize they're under stress, and social media doesn't help, because all you see is everybody's best day, right? Nobody has a bad day in social media, or if they do, they get booed off there. They go, what are you doing? This is a place for, this is where excitement happens, and everybody's always winning, and that's not life. When Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get hit, you have to have a plan for when you get hit. So for me, that's why when I'm traveling, I say I do 3, because every hour in the air is equivalent to an X-ray. So it robs you of your energy. I have one paper that I wrote and published. It was a trip to Spain. And what I did was I didn't use any of my biohacking, my health optimization. I just wanted to see what happens to my body. I didn't feel any different because but when I landed, I measured myself before, and I measured myself in the executive lounge in Madrid. I lost 70% of my energy on that flight, and I didn't feel it at all. So that meant that's what they call jet lag. But it's not jet lag, it's light lag. The light codes, my body didn't know what it was doing at, 25,000 feet, 500 miles an hour. It's going, what the heck? Because it's always looking at the environment saying, where am I at? What am I doing? Am I balanced? Am I okay? And when you're in Now, on my conscious mind, I knew I was safe. I was I was sitting there reading a book or watching a movie or whatever I was doing, or meditating even. But then I also did my practices, which is there's actually a product for EMF that is actually the only product that actually will protect you from EMF, and we use it here. And it was designed for the government for actually during when they dropped the H bomb, and they found out there was certain supplements that can protect you from EMF radiation. So when I'm flying, I'll take a little bit more of those than I do on the normal day, and then I will also not eat the food on the airplane, because when you eat, if you have HRV, you'll find that your HRV goes down just by eating, and that's normal. That's why if you can get out and do a brisk walk after you eat, you actually speed up your metabolism, because now you're going to get the sugar out of the muscles, and now the food you just consumed you can get new sugar that in your body becomes a more functioning metabolic machine and just a little bit of walking even. In fact, I've just been doing a lot of interviews with Fox about the new study that actually came out from Mayo Clinic that showed even a 10-minute walk can decrease your chances of dementia by 40%. So it's all about movement, breath, getting your body aligned, getting your energy to flow, and it's a lifestyle. So it's not just one thing. I wish I could say one thing, but we're always doing. We believe that BrainTap is an important part of it, and it's some place that people can start because it's not expensive, and the whole family can do it. So that's one of the bigger things. Like PMF can be $20,000. So not a lot of people are going to buy PMF for their home, or a salt chamber for $4,000 even. They're not going to do that. There's things that I do that other people might not. I get them for the clinic, and then some of them make their way to my house. That's the way it works.
Of course. Yeah, that's how it's worked in mine too. You find out what you really like, and yeah, it makes its way over. So absolutely. So many good things to take away here, especially the concept of we do have to stack things. We have to find out what works for us, a little bit more exploration there. And most importantly is the vibe, and really working on your positive vibe, because boy, I can tell you, changing your mood, uplifting yourself, surrounding yourself with folks who are uplifted just makes a world of difference. And great place to start.
Yeah.
Wow, Patrick, great stuff here. I learned a ton. I know folks are going to definitely have a great learning experience here with this podcast. And so I am looking forward to definitely putting our show notes together here. Of course, braintap.com. You guys can even try it out, 14 days trial membership there, see if you like it. Now, in terms of the research study, it was 30 days or so. You'll have it out there on the perimenopause.
Yes,
as well.
We're working on it right now, and she's doing her recordings. We're encoding them. They'll probably go up in stages. They'll be enough for 6 weeks of use, and it'll be spelled out like this is week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and then people can follow along with the research study that the doctor's doing. Now they're doing it. We're doing a lot of other measurements and things like that, and having them take like the Pittsburgh quality of sleep test and scoring it and all these other things. So we'll share. All of our doctors, like your doctor, will get access to that research, and you usually do a press release. We usually tell people about it. So hopefully within 3 months, we're going to have a really good. I'm sure we are, because she did it for herself first, so that's why she knows it's going to work, and then she wants to prove it out with doing a bigger study.
Awesome. Oh, can't wait for that. And then of course we'll link the ancient microbiome probiotic that you mentioned as well in here, and then we'll have a code for you guys, and I'll get that at the end here when we wrap up. So thank you so much, Dr. Patrick Porter, for coming on. I really sincerely appreciate it. Look forward to seeing what you guys have coming up in new research beyond the perimenopause in the upcoming years.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.